Well, I'm not sure which sessions you were in, but I was listening in on a fantastic learning path session. I'm sure the same was for you right across the board. To follow up on this learning path, we're going to build and build and build now with our very first Ask the Expert session, where you have the one-on-one opportunity to have your questions answered live on screen by the panelists that you're learning from. These will focus on the topics of engaging men, implementing childcare, and equal pay. Just 3 topics that should be top of mind and front of mind for any sustainable leader. Make sure you're tuned in for that. After these breakouts, we'll have another short networking break where you can connect with your colleagues. And don't forget, you can also network throughout the event by reaching out to other attendees privately using the DM direct messaging chat option on the right-hand side of your screen, or keep the conversation going by commenting in the public chat. The lounges, which is what we've created for you this year, is designed so that you can all plunge in as and when you feel like it, make new friends, make new relationships, and bring them away from you after this target gender equality. Now, I'm going to quickly guide you to the right of your screen over there. You can see the chat option where you can have a public conversation. You can have your direct messaging, which we mentioned just there. But now we've utilized the polls, but between the chat and the polls in the middle is Q&A. And this is something that's going to be so important to enhance your experience for the Ask the Expert session. We want you to use the Q&A section to ask anything you want to learn from the expert in front of you, and they will get back to you on that as the session takes place in real time. Enjoy your half hour ahead.
Thank you so much, James, and welcome to everyone listening here today. I think it's been basically said by every speaker here today in this event that gender equality is not only something that needs to be tackled by women, but it's really about all genders playing their part. I am Elizabeth Anaresh, and I lead the Target Gender Equality Program globally, which means that in many workshops and sessions I've participated, we always get this question of how can we engage our male colleagues, our male leaders on this topic as we implement our strategy. So I'm really excited to be here today with Edward Wageni, who's the global head of He for She, a movement that I'm sure many of you have heard of already, as well as Jose Luis Conde, who's the operations, aviation, and network lead at Exolum, which is a Spanish company active in the energy support services and logistics industry, really a male-dominated sector that I'm sure many of you have questions about. And as James was saying before, you can plug them in the chat and the Q&A feature while they're speaking, while they're presenting, and we will have a lot of time for these questions afterwards. But with that, I'll pass it over to you, Edward, to really give us an introduction and overview of what He for She is all about, what tools are there that are really helpful or valuable to the private sector, and also what's these arguments of resistance that you've often faced along your professional and personal experience, and how could we unpack them? Over to you, Edward.
Thank you very much. First thing is to say that we do appreciate for having us here and to be able to meet with other actors that are interested in on gender equality. So I'll just provide a bit of a background, on engaging men. I was listening to some other conversations and I could hear that there was the clear conversations going on the importance of having women at, sitting on decision-making tables. But just to provide a bit of a rationale is to say that, why He for She, the rationale for He for She is recognition that men hold disproportionate level of power across cultures, globally, but they remain to a large extent absent from gender equality conversations. So similar to other human rights and social justice movements, gender equality requires that all people of all genders are part of the gender equality agenda. So He for She is an initiative of UN Women, which is the United Nations entity for gender equality, and it provides and it's a solidarity movement, and that provides a platform for men and boys to complement the work of women movements and create an equal world. And just looking at at the global level, according to the latest World Economic Forum latest data, it will take about 267 years to achieve gender equality. And also then noting that 90% of all heads of government and Fortune 500 CEOs are male identifying. So you realize from that is that, you know, a lot of power is held by men, and they determine the policies, the resources that are used to determine how society takes shape, including, in terms of gender equality. So a bit of a background on He for She. It was created in 2014. Many people may remember when it was launched by Emma Watson, and through that, it has generated a lot of interest across the world. It has been a subject of more than 3 billion conversations on social media, and that happens every year. And over the last 5 years, we have worked with, very closely with partners to deliver ambitious commitments across, governments, the private sector, as well as within the third sector. Just to give an example, we have the government of Iceland that introduced the equal pay for every single citizen. So right now, it's illegal to pay male identifying or female identifying people different based on gender. At the government level, an example is, the government of Malawi outlawed child marriage across the country, and through that, many girls have been able to go back to school. An example from one of our private sector partners is, for example, PwC shifted, from 18 to 14% female representation on the board. But it's not just in terms of the percentage, the numbers that we look at. It's also the lived-in experience of women when they get into those positions, because many of you who are listening in here today would perhaps agree with me that sometimes being in those spaces can be quite tough. So it's about the lived-in experience, how women feel represented and listened to beyond the numbers that we have. So building on the early success in 2022, we are also creating a unique system of partners, bringing together the most ambitious leaders from across government, the corporate world, and academia, and the third sector, to bring them together. And they are coming in to join together to form the He for She Alliance that seeks to share and develop scalable and shareable solutions on gender equality, addressing some of the most pressing gender equality issues. So the trailblazers in this field will spearhead transformative change across countries, companies, campuses, and communities, inspiring many to follow and develop and demonstrate the value of allyship. So just to be very clear that the champions that are going to be joining us are male, and that's why we're talking about having the allyship that is going to be accelerating change. One of the other things that we are trying to do is then looking at how do we then deepen the, looking at transforming patriarchal masculinities. And what I mean by this is looking at the ideas and the power that men hold about over women, and this is looking at how this is expressed individually. That is in terms of attitudes and behavior, looking at institutional levels, which is then seen in policies and practices, but also ideologically, and this is seen in social norms and cultural narratives. So one of the things, one of the tools that we have been able to apply over time to help companies, including governments, to engage conversations is the Barbershop Toolkit. Actually, the Barbershop Toolkit was developed by Iceland as a He for She champion, and this was one of the output of their commitment. It has been used by many companies that we have partnered with, including other intergovernmental institutions like the EU. We have Barclays and Barclaycard, as well as World Bank. So this tool has been able to generate conversation, including encouraging men to take parental leave and encourage others to do so that they are there and able to contribute equally in their homes when they have newly born kids. This has also been able to to engage and to address the issue of zero-sum game, whereby some of the concerns have been that that it's felt that by some people that if one wins, the other one loses. So it's kind of trying to break that mentality, so that no one is feeling helped, left out, and helping to change the mindsets and create a safe space to have conversations. So really, the Barbershop Toolkit is about rallying men to commit to upholding gender equality and change the discourse among their peers to build momentum for gender equality. And this tool enlists the attendees to move away from the discourse loaded with negative gender stereotypes and expectation, and through that examine their behavior and encouragement to work towards positive transformation of social norms, and examine the role of them as change agents in wherever they are, to take responsibility and to be held and to hold themselves accountable for their actions, and to encourage other men to do so. So basically what we mean by accountable is building gender equality in all that we do, and ensuring that our work with men contributes to the empowerment of women and people from oppressed genders, and being also very critically aware of our own power and privileges, and to open constructive conversations. It also then looks at taking action to address personal institutional practices that go against our principles of the principles of gender equality and human rights, and acknowledging that any harm caused and making amends, and that is in line with the do no harm principle. It also looks at respecting and promoting women's leadership in the gender equality movement. So very much in line with what I say, that it's not just the numbers, it's about also when women are in the leadership role, they feel that they are respected. So men have got to make sure that they are conscious of that. And then also creating a culture, creating structures of consultation and partnership with women's rights institutions. So this tool has different sections. One of them is the leadership engagement. This seeks to look at deepening understanding of commitments to gender equality practices and policies at the highest level. This is very much in line with what I mentioned, that men as leaders, wherever they are, they have the privilege of being able to mobilize the political support, as well as providing resources to promote gender equality. So this is really the objective around that, is seeking the understanding at the highest level, and the audience is normally closed event for the management only. We have other areas like act like a woman, like act like a man, act like a woman, and this is basically exploring how gender norms impact every day on the lives of men and women, and this is the audiences, everyone. And again, we also have what is gender. We might make assumptions that everybody understands that, but actually there are different interpretations. So trying to make sure that we have a common understanding around that, and the objective around that is to understand how gender stereotype harms society, harms the society. We also have another section that looks at violence, and this seeks to identify different types of violence and explore gender-based violence, and this is for everyone. So I'll pause at that point, and then look forward to responding to any questions that anybody might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edward. And I think it's really exciting and incredible to hear that he for she has been generating 3 billion conversations. So we're just one of 3 billion here today. I also popped the Barbershop Toolkit in the chat here for anyone to access afterwards, which includes these different tools like what is gender that Edward just mentioned as well. And I'm already seeing some questions coming in the Q&A feature. You can also even vote for other questions to signal that they're also of interest to you. And I encourage you to keep them coming. But first, I wanted to pass it over to Jose and ask him a few questions that we prepared on our own to really help him share his journey as well. And the first one is starting on a personal note, to really please outline what your personal journey has been of realizing that gender equality needs to be a business priority.
Okay, hello, Elizabeth. Well, first, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. It's really a pleasure for Excellent and for me to join to this session. No? And as you mentioned before, Excellent is the Europe's leading logistics company for liquid fuels in Europe, and one of the largest in the world. So We are, as a very technology company, for us is very important diversity, and diversity really has become one of the main pillars in our last ESG plans that we have in the company. So, answering to your question about me, I could say that my personal journey started with my first experiences in Exelon as a manager, where I was the youngest of the team and only of a male team. So, although it was really a good experience, not the situation with an apprenticeship to work with teams with that belong to another generation, it's true that it also helped me to learn that the right talent serve the right talent makes serve to drive value. So later in our organization, with the renewal of the workforce, we started to hire and introduce more women in our technical and managing positions. No? Although we are still a minority, so currently they represent more or less 30% of the employees in the managing position. No? So what really this transformation of this workforce is allowing us to drive our transformation as a company in the actual context. You know, the climate targets that we have with the European Green Deal, the handling sustainable fuels, all related with these changes. So, and that's why it becomes really a very important business priority for us.
Great, thanks for sharing that, Jose. And I think, yeah, sometimes it really takes that step of walking into a room and realizing, wait, there's someone missing here. And with that, many perspectives missing. So thanks for outlining that. So then within your company, how have you so far engaged male colleagues or male leaders on the topic of gender equality? And are there some key learnings or takeaways that you can share from those practices so far?
Okay, so well, Exxon is working to engage in general all organizations through a large list of initiatives. No, you know that we consider that it's a strategy that it has been included in our current strategy plan that we have between 2022 and 2026 and a specific target. So, just let me show you some examples how we are engaging men. The first one is closer to the hiring process. So we have a hiring process diverse in which we consider not only the diversity of the profile of the candidates, but the diversity of the interviewers, no? With the aim to reducing unconscious gender biases. No? The second, it would be probably that the best internal talent is identified with the annual performance. So it would help us to define our career plan, and it's really a good external tool, no, to guarantee this gender equality between teams. Obviously, visibility, no? It's very important, visibility. The last one, also the training in conscious biases to excellent managers. So regarding to my key learnings, I will choose probably three. The first one is communication. Communication and communication. You know that what is not talked about, it does not exist. It's just like a silent runner that we have in the organization. So it's very important, and we need to give visibility to the gender equality and also include it in our agenda. The second, humility. We must to be humble, and I must to be the first. So we need to be open to learn. No, I gave the example about training in conscious biases for men and women. No, and the third one is also very important: the alignment with the cultural and the values of the companies.
Great, thanks for breaking it down to three such really concrete things. And another piece that's related to that is stereotypes that we know just persist across the world, but especially in male-dominated industries. Also, speakers on other panels today were talking about them, especially in the energy sector, for example. So from your experience, what stereotypes do you think persist, and how are you unpacking them with your colleagues, with your teams? You already talked about the unconscious bias training, but could you go into a little bit more detail there?
Yes, okay. As you have mentioned, not only energy companies, also distinct careers. You know, we have these male stereotypes that limits our options to incorporate women in our organization, and we are conscious about that. So we work. So our first challenge is try to attract women to STEM careers and companies, energy companies like Exxon. No? So in our case, we work very closer to the university and even with the high schools, trying to show how we have female leaders in the organization and how they can find a job in our organization. And obviously, the second one is to work internally, for the commitment that diversity make us more competitive.
Great. Yes, it's really that combination of external and internal actions here. And I have another question for you, which is based on the fact that at so many events like this, when we talk about gender equality in business, there's usually CEOs talking or lots of representatives from HR departments or sustainability departments. You're from a different department, so really just wanted to hear from you. How would you tackle this argument that we often hear that responsibility for gender or diversity sits within HR? If you're in another department, it's not my business to deal with it, so to say. How would you unpack that, or how does the responsibility sit within your companies?
Okay, so well, what we understand is that all managers, we are part of this HR team, no? In terms that since we have the obligation to lead with all policies concerning with people, no, within our organization, developing our teams with gender equality is not just responsibility of the HR departments, no, but each manager should empower and support their teams. No, it is part of your role that you have inside the organization, no? Giving them the opportunity to grow and creating this value of respect and tolerance.
Great. I see we have loads of questions already coming in from the audience, so I'll start plugging some and get back to both of you with a few questions here. But let's start with the first one that got by far the most votes so far, which is from Megan, asking, what would you say to those who think promoting gender equality hurts men, particularly in business? So this common argument of fear to miss out on the next promotion, or fear to be the next one fired because another female leader comes in, or this common argument that we often hear. Maybe Edward, I'll start with you to try to unpack this narrative a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that is the question that I talked about, that gender equality is not a zero-sum game whereby when we promote equality that some lose and some win. It's actually about ensuring that all of society is getting equitable opportunities to be able to maximize on their potential, and to have everybody sitting on the table equally and being able to contribute. So the question also talks about so that's very much in terms of hurting men and how we worked with them with companies. I gave the example of PW, where they have moved from 20 plus to about 47% in the boardroom representation. We recognize that it has to start with a clear intention of having policies in place, and we are not asking companies to fire men so as to bring men on board. Is to make sure that as there's movement within the organization, there's the deliberate effort to ensure that women are also then having the opportunity to be able to sit in the spaces, that there are policies to, for example, I've had a lot of conversations about mentorship. That there's a deliberate effort to ensure that women are getting the training that then enables them to have their own agency and confidence to be able to sit in those spaces. So this is a conversation that we've had with many organizations who feel that, what we're actually asking us is to let fire men so that we can have women come in. That is not exactly it. We are conscious that it takes time, but what we need to have in place is leadership supporting that, ensuring that there is clear policies that outline the organization's intentions and commitments towards gender equality, and having clear targets. In one of the sessions that I was listening into earlier, one of the organizations, I think it is Signify, talking about how they have set targets by 2025. That is exactly the way we work, whereby the current cohort of leaders and champions that we have set clear targets by 2025, outlining and looking at the context of each organization or company, and taking that into account when aiming for setting parity.
Thank you, Edward. And yeah, I think it also builds on what Jose was saying before around communication, really from the very beginning, making sure you're not just talking to the women in the organization, but making sure it's an all team effort. I'll pick another question here that builds a little bit on that and goes to you, Jose. It's a question from Adriana that says, when you hired more women, how was the response of men? What about meritocracy? Was that at some point questions? So basically saying, did anyone say you're just hiring this person because she's a woman and you're not actually looking at the best candidate, which is an argument we often hear. And you also said before, talking about gender diverse hiring panels and so on. Can you go into a bit more detail on that, and how would you respond to such a question?
Okay, yes. Well, it's true that when you start working with these policies, not that try to look for equality, in terms of giving opportunity to both men and women, you always create some disruption inside the organization. So in our case, as I mentioned before, we try to, well, we do in all our hiring process, we incorporate the best man and the best women that we can find in the market. And it's true that that in all this process of interviews, we always look for this gender equality in order to avoid introducing some topics that could impact, if you are choosing one man or if you are choosing the woman. So in our case, I don't think it's really a problem. It's more based on meritocracy and trying to have always the representative of both sex in that way.
Great. So basically what you're saying, it's important to establish these policies, practices, and rules so that it doesn't seem like it's just a random, so to say, decision, but really based on a company policy that's high priority for the company as well. And also another speaker in the previous session was saying, why do we assume that the best candidate necessarily means that it can't be a diverse candidate? Why do we think it's two mutually exclusive groups? Well, in fact, research shows that it definitely isn't. I'll pose another question to you, Jose, before I get back to Edward. Here, a question by Sonia in the chat about mentorship programs and how it works to develop mentees' concepts if you are the male. And I know you also have experience with mentorship process. So do you think it's important to encourage men to mentor women, and why?
My answer will be say yes, mainly because of my experience. I think it's really very important for men to mentor women as well, because it allows us to share a vision to face challenges from a different point of view, from a gender perspective, completely different. Men and women, we are really different. Although we have the same opportunities, our approach, we approach our goals in a very different way. On the other hand, men who mentor women discover and realize the barriers or the glass ceiling that sometimes they build around them. So from another gender point of view, we can focus on breaking this glass ceiling through the continuous support, offering then a different approach to achieve their goals, and obviously always following during with the experience of the mentors in that way.
Thank you. And yeah, just before we had a session on mentorship as well. So we'll make sure for everyone to share the recording afterwards so you can have a chance to also check that out in terms of how companies went about setting up their mentorship system and having mentorships between male, female, or other genders in their workforce. I'll take another question here, which is in Spanish, but also got quite a few votes here, and it's about the academic sector. It's a question from Silvia Valencia here, so I'll post that to you, Edward, about what's been the successes so far by he for she working with the academic sector, and is there any guidance or lessons learned from that experience. Of course, at the Global Compact, it's not only about business, but we're a multi-stakeholder initiative. So I want to make sure we can also touch on the academic sector here as well.
Right, thank you very much. So far, we have about 250 student clubs across the world that identify as he for she and that are working within those institutions to address issues that students feel are of importance to them. In the last phase of he for she, we had actually a good number of universities working with us. Currently, we also have a number of them working with us. One of them is Harvard University. The other one is Harvard University INSEAD Institute of Business. And what we look at is, universities are a point whereby you are targeting critical members of society that are going to be in leadership in the future, and whereby you then see that as an opportunity of socializing them and looking at, socializing them in a way that when they get into those positions of leadership, they are going to actually promote that. So I don't know whether I've fully answered that question, but I can invite Sylvia to write to me personally, and I'll be able to provide more detailed response on how we can collaborate, or rather how she can work in a university setting to promote gender equality.
Thank you so much. And I know we're already at time here, and there's quite a few more questions unanswered in the chat. So we'll make sure to get back to everyone via a message here afterwards. And we'll also keep popping a few more additional resources in the chat. But thank you everyone so much for actively participating, and huge thanks to you, Edward, for of course leading the He for She movement and taking the time to share your experiences here today. And to you, Jose, as well, for really sharing your personal and professional experience from Spain. We also did an interview with Jose recently at the Global Compact, so we'll also share that in the chat so you can read a bit more about his experiences in writing afterwards too. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and back to you, James, because I know we have an exciting program coming up afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.